spread the word of their people across this vast universe. The word of movies, comic heroes, toys, video games, etc., etc., etc. There are many podcasts, and this is one of them. You're listening to The Geeks Talk Back.
And welcome back to the Geeks Talk Back podcast. I am Sean.
I'm Chris.
And this is episode 9. And in today's episode, we're going to discuss a little-known gem amongst the sci-fi movies, a movie called Europa Report. And we've also listed our top 10 video games of all time.
That's our personal favorites. It's not based on anything.
Yeah.
So
our personal top 10s.
Our personal top 10s. So we're going to get a lot of hate mail. Don't hate us.
Yeah. So if you just disagree, just agree to disagree.
Or send us your top 10, and we'll discuss that as well.
This is Jason Hatfield, and you're listening to Sean and Chris on the Geeks Talk Back podcast.
By the power of Grayskull, we're sending you back to the future. Go! Okay, man, let's turn and burn.
Force is strong with this one.
The plaque for the alternate is down in the ladies' room.
Okay, and last week I was listening to the Word Stuff podcast. It's a new one I came across, and they were talking about the movie Europa Report. They said it was on Netflix. So I checked it out, and I was actually really impressed with it.
I liked it.
Yeah, I thought it was not over the top. You know, it was almost like it was like found footage is what they used for the most part.
Yeah, first we're going to say spoiler alert. It's a 2013 or 2012 movie called the Europa Report. It is on Netflix right now. And basically the premise of it is, I don't think it's set too far in the future, but basically it's the first manned mission. They went to Europa, which is one of the moons of Jupiter. So they're like way past Mars or for whatever reason, and they spend like 29 months, something like that, getting to Europa, one of the moons of Jupiter, and shit goes sideways. But it is shot in a semi-movie, like you're just seeing shit happen, but then it's also shot very documentary style. Documentary, is that even a word?
I don't know,
but we'll go with it. It's shot by cameras that are on both the outside and the interior of the spacecraft. There's some narration by a female. I recognize her face, but I don't know who she is. But she's basically the CEO. The CEO of the Europa One company, which is the company that is doing this space exploration. So it's not like NASA or anything like that. It's a private entity that is doing this manned space flight. And basically, it starts out with her talking about this mission and all the prep, and then it kind of... One of the problems that I had following it is, I had a house full of people that were annoying me, but then second was that it kept jumping around a lot.
It really did.
And it was really, if you weren't paying attention when it jumped and you didn't see the time, you had no idea what was going on.
Yeah, at the very beginning, it seemed to jump around a whole lot more.
Yeah.
And it was hard to follow because they said that the one guy died. It's been like 2 years since he died, and then next scene he's there.
Yeah.
So I mean, I was able to piece together that it was jumping around, but
yeah. And then it doesn't explain how he dies until almost the end of the movie.
Right.
And then there's another guy, one of the other engineers is, you can tell he's obviously messed up somehow, not physically, but just he looks sick. He's not clean shaven like anybody other guys. And they make a reference to, you're not recovering the way we want you to. But up to that point, you had no idea what the hell had happened.
Right.
But it did jump around. It like showed some of the pre-launch and launch stuff. And then it jumped ahead like 2 years. And then it jumped back to like 6 months after takeoff.
Yeah, the 19 months before.
Yeah.
Yeah. Granted, it's only 2 years old, but what I liked about it is that it seemed really relevant because, you know, you have Elon Musk and SpaceX.
Yeah, they just did a launch yesterday.
Yeah. And the recovery of the rocket didn't go quite as well as they hoped it would. But the fact that it's a private entity, you know, because whenever you have, you know, space disasters in the past with NASA, it's always a national tragedy because, you know, the government funds NASA. NASA had, American astronauts that perished or whatever. But in this one, you actually have, basically they're employees.
Yeah.
And instead of people having the, people in NASA having the backlash from the people, they're almost looking at more like, well, I'm gonna lose my job over this sort of thing. And so it was kind of a different twist on the space disaster, because right after launch they lost communications with them, so they had no idea what had happened.
Yeah, there was, again, they don't make it 100% clear what had happened, and then it seemed like it was one foobar right after another that basically ultimately, and I'm going to spoil it right here and right now, the whole crew dies, which is actually kind of odd for a movie.
Right.
There's usually that one survivor, but it just seems like, okay, this went wrong, and then this is going to go wrong, and then, this guy got really sick, and this guy's dead, yada, 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 and it all snowballs.
Right. Well, and the whole premise is that they're going to Europa to try to find, life, which it was a nice change, because usually when they find life, it's like, Close Encounters or E.T., where it's actually like a real intelligent life. I mean, they actually found what they probably would find when they do find life, being, monocell organisms.
And basically, the premise on that is that Europa is basically a planet made entirely of ice. However,
a moon.
I'm sorry, the moon is completely made of ice. But then they found fluctuations in the internal temperature that made them think, there's an ocean underneath there. If there's ocean, there's heat, there's usually life, and that's the whole premise. Is that's why they're going to Europa, is because they want to prove that there's life of some kind on another planet.
Right, and they do find the algae type.
They do find the
life
algae
form, and then they end up being something like 300 meters from the original landing point.
Yeah, again, it's very Armageddon-esque, where they're supposed to land on this exact spot, but they end up missing it by 100 meters, and it sucks for them. That was definitely a recall to a scene in Armageddon where he said, you missed the landing zone. It's Steve Buscemi. He's like, we're sitting on I think he says a goddamn iron plate, and he's like, well, how do you know that? He says, because I'm a genius. It's one of the great lines that he has in that movie. But they missed it by, however long. I don't remember what the distance is, but it basically went from the perfect location to, crap, what the hell are we going to do? Right.
And then, the crew's divided, and the one astronaut, she wants to do a walk, basically, and half the crew is saying, no, it's too dangerous. Half saying, well, we've come this far, we got to do something. She makes it out there, and she finds the life that she's looking for, and everyone rejoices, and she starts seeing, light under the ice. And
bioluminescence.
And you've got everyone and their mother screaming, get back, get back, get back, don't go out there, come back to the ship right now. Which, if you've ever seen any movie ever, you always do what everyone says to do.
Yeah. When the majority says do this, you usually do that.
Right, so...
And they never do.
No, they don't.
They die.
Every time. But, so it was kind of a nice, 1-2 punch, because they find the life that, you'd think they would find, being algae, bacteria, whatever else. But then after they find that, it gets one-upped by finding some, it doesn't really let you know what it is till later on, but a much more advanced life form.
Yeah. And it brings up a good discussion of what amount of discovery, like how much human life is worth scientific discovery.
Right.
Is it one life? Is it 6 lives in this case? Where do you draw the line? And is somebody risking their own lives? It was not Earth as we know it is dying, and we need to find another inhabitable planet now for future generations. That's not the premise in this movie whatsoever. It's basically, there's this company who has butt tons of money.
Mm-hmm.
They want to go to Europa to see if there's life there. This was completely exploration.
Sure.
That's all this was. This wasn't, we need to go find a cure for some fucked up disease or the world's dying.
Right.
This was completely exploration. Is it worth 6 human lives and umpteen gazillion dollars? So but it makes a good point, is where do you draw that line?
But to the crew it was, because in the end of the movie, they opt to take parts from the life support system to fix the communications array.
Yes, they do.
So I guess they felt it was it was worth it. Well, I don't know if it was worth it if they set out to say, okay, we're all willing to die for this, but they're actually knowing they're going to die, but not to die in vain.
True.
Because then everything everyone else had died for would all be lost.
Yeah. But again, I don't, because even at the end of the movie, and like we said, they do, all of the crew members die. It's a complete loss, except they are able to, basically, they're in a situation where there's only 2 of them left. They realize that there's no way in hell that they're making it back home. They're not gonna be able to live on this planet. And basically, the 2 people make the determination, we're going to ultimately sacrifice our own lives to fix the communications array and beam all this data back so that the people on Earth can see what we saw. Because, like I said, they did find algae or some, single-cell organism, but then they basically find what, to me, looks like almost a kraken.
Mm-hmm.
Is a smaller kraken.
Something like that.
Yeah. With all these weird lights and shit. But they're even after the end of the movie, basically, it's the CEO of the company saying, oh, they're heroes, oh, they're heroes. I don't get that feeling. It's not oh, you saved our planet. It's not oh, you cured cancer by giving us this data.
Right.
It's basically like, yeah, we now found out that this planet or this moon that is 7 billion miles away has this fucked up creature that killed my whole crew.
Mm-hmm.
Is that really heroic? I mean, in me being, at one point, I wanted to work for NASA. I wanted to get a degree in aerospace engineering. So one side of me is like, yeah, that's pretty cool, but I still wouldn't. I mean, that from the science geek in me, I'm like, yeah, that's pretty cool. Space, all that stuff. But then the other side of me is like, you guys basically, you're not what I would call a hero. It's, yeah, you did something cool, yeah, you did something noble, but I'm not going to call you a hero because you went up to a planet that's 7 billion miles, or I keep saying planet, you went to a moon 7 billion miles away and sent us pictures of this thing that we still don't know.
Well, I mean, it's all semantics.
It is.
I mean, if you want to call him a hero, you want to call him, explorer or Pathfinder or whatever you want to call him. I mean, the overall story, I think, was real, black, white, nuts and bolts science fiction.
Absolutely.
And it wasn't over the top. It wasn't a huge, I think one of their opening weekends they made like $200.
Oh, wow.
On one screen, that was it.
See, because I don't even remember, like, I've never heard of it.
I had neither. Neither at all. But then...
but it has the guy from District 9. I don't know what his name is.
I don't know either.
Basically the main character of District 9.
Well, and I think that this also was a foreign film, like District 9 was.
It could have been. He didn't have an accent in that one, but a couple of people did. It was... If they really only had $1 million to do it, they did one hell of a job.
Yeah, it was something like that.
Because there wasn't... I mean, there was a handful of times where the CG was like, eh... But for the most of it, it was pretty well shot. I mean, I wouldn't have known.
Yeah,
based on budget.
There was nothing that was made for TV sci-fi channel movie at all.
It was very clean cut. Like we said, a lot of the confusion and stuff too that I found came mainly from the switch back and forth of times and events. You didn't know what had happened when, but they did have a little timer that showed how far they were post-launch.
Yeah, but it was hard to see and hard to read.
It was very hard to read. I'm sitting on a couch probably, 8 feet away from a 48-inch TV. I know, I want a big one, but the wife won't let me. Babe, I need a bigger TV. But yeah, I couldn't. I actually, the first couple of times I saw it, by the time it was gone, I had tried to move to see what time frame we're talking.
Right.
And then finally you realize, okay, it's years, months, days, or was it? No, it was months. I'm sorry. Months, days, hours, minutes, seconds.
Whatever it was.
Whatever it was. And then another thing I found that was an issue too, sometimes, not on all the scenes, is that when you would have 3 or 4 different cameras, again, because it was, a lot of it was, actually majority of it was like basically webcams inside the spaceship.
Right.
And they would show 4 different cameras at one time.
Yeah.
and you're like trying to see, okay, what am I looking at? Because there's 2 or 3 people in this screen and another guy over here, or it's a different angle of the same capsule. So it sometimes it got too busy because you're like, okay, what the hell am I looking at? And then a couple of the action scenes, or what I would call action scenes, especially when people were outside the ship, either in space doing an EVA, or when the chicks on the planet, or I said planet again, on the surface of the moon, they would keep cutting to these really weird camera angles inside the helmet that just didn't look right. It was bugging me, and they did it a lot. But there's a couple of really cool shots where they're using the reflection of the helmet to see. They don't want to show you what it is,
right?
But they're using like the reflection. Those shots were cool, but I don't know. Some of the quad and 3 camera angles got a little bit too busy to follow.
Yeah, but I think that may have been intentional.
Very well could have been.
Because, initially they launched the craft, and then they lose communications, and then it's dark for however long it was, 2 years or whatever it was. Then all of a sudden, all this information gets beamed back to them.
Yeah.
So perhaps the busy scenes with the 4 cameras and all that stuff, that might be what they're trying to decipher to determine what happened too.
That is exactly the premise that I got, was that because at the beginning, when the CEO is up there talking, say, hey, we had this launch, it went dark 6 months afterwards, we hadn't heard anything for 18 months or 2 years, and then all of a sudden we got all this information back.
Right.
And basically the premise that I took away from it was that this is the data, these are the camera feeds, this is all the stuff that we got back from them, and then it went dark again. And it's basically them, their analysts going through it and watching everything and saying, okay, what the hell happened up there? And so, yeah, that, like I said, it didn't happen throughout the whole movie, but there was a couple scenes, especially right towards the beginning, where I was trying to figure out, what is this and where is it going, where it seemed like it was jumbled. But then it really smoothed out towards the end, and it got a lot better.
Yeah, because most of the jumping around was right in the beginning. And they didn't really delve a lot into character development, so you didn't get invested in the characters so much. You kind of almost like a brief once over of what they're about. And they also would they were pretty, from what I can tell, pretty spot on with the science behind everything.
I mean, again, it's been 15 years since I've done any serious engineering. They didn't discuss a lot of the science behind, so they didn't make themselves look like idiots. They basically said, here, we're going to Jupiter, and they went. They didn't give you much about the science or anything like that.
No, but I'm saying, and what they were doing, how they're going about it. The one guy who had the hydrazine on him, they couldn't put him back into the.
Yeah, I don't know personally what the hell hydrazine is.
Yeah, well, actually, this morning I looked it up. It's been used for years. It actually is very toxic.
Okay, there you go.
But usually, I mean, almost always watching a movie, at least one time, I'm like, oh, that's bullshit. Yeah. There's no way that would happen. Yeah. I didn't really have a whole lot of obvious bullshit moments.
There wasn't any obvious bullshit moments. Like I said, it really didn't tell you an exact time frame that it took them from launch from Earth to it's somewhere in the years. Whether or not that's accurate and what speed that craft would be traveling, they don't ever say, and I don't know what the math is off the top of my head. Yeah, so they don't really get into a lot of the math and the science, but everything they present to you seems very plausible.
Yeah, and what they did, give you or show you, whatever else, it wasn't something like totally over your head.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't too nerdy. Because one of the other things that they were talking about, and one of the issues with the walk on the moon was the radiation. Well, we can all understand radiation. They didn't say, they basically said, hey, there's radiation out there. It's fluctuating. You have 2 hours max. They didn't say, they didn't throw out, oh, you'll have, 17 million rads by the time you're done like that.
Right.
So yeah, it wasn't too over the top. It didn't get too geeky. It reminded me a lot of, I want to say, is it Sandra Bullock in Interstellar? Have you seen Interstellar?
No, I've not seen that.
I think that's it. It's just a recent movie last year with George Clooney, and it's a really weird space movie. But it kind of gave me that vibe because I've watched it probably within the last 2 or 3 months. But it wasn't way too over the top. It was basically, hey, these are the facts that we live in. We live in a time where we have the technology. We're going to Jupiter, and that's it. They don't try to explain anything fancy. Back to the character development, I think there's a couple of scenes. They gave basically a brief bio of who everybody is, like you were saying. There's the captain, there's the pilot, there's a chief engineer and an engineer, and there's like a handful of science people. Was there 5 people? 6 people?
There were 6.
Okay. But then there was a couple of scenes that were weird to me because, and it has to do with the guy, again, the guy who played, who was in District 9. There's a couple of scenes with him, like, you think he's, like, trying to Skype with his family back home, but it's obviously there's a delay because they're out in space. But then, all of a sudden, he's gone. He's dead. They don't explain to you how.
Yeah, and then he's back.
And then he's back because they flashed back, 18 months prior when he's still alive, and then he's talking to his family again, and then they flash forward back, and he's like, oh, he's dead again, and then they finally, towards the end of the movie, show you what the hell happened.
Yeah.
Basically, he's one of the engineers. Him and the chief engineer. This is right after the communications array breaks. They have to go out and fix it. Well, a pin is jammed. They go to rip it out. The chief engineer cuts his suit, starts decompressing and basically losing oxygen. They both get back to the airlock, and then the District 9 guy realizes he's covered in hydrazine, and apparently it's very deadly, very toxic.
Right.
And they're like, yeah, you're shit out of luck. You can't come inside the airlock because you'll corrupt the entire ship and we'll all die.
Yeah, and then the chief engineer, before he passed out, was going to rip him out of the suit and throw him in there.
Yeah, which I'm like, that was a little bit like...
Yeah, I don't know if that would work or not.
See, and that's the problem, is that depending on which version of sci-fi you subscribe to, I've seen... There's the movie Mission to Mars. Is it Mission to Mars? No, Mission to Mars is with Val Kilmer. There's another one with I can't even remember. There's two Mars movies that came out like almost the same year. One's Mission to Mars, then there's another one. But in that premise, basically the guy opens up his suit in the middle of space, and he immediately basically freezes and dies and cracks. Like, you see his face completely freeze up and he cracks and he's dead.
Right.
But then there's the Arnold Schwarzenegger Total Recall, where you open up and he's on the surface of Mars, and he basically explodes. Eventually. So after he basically suffocates. So I don't know if anybody really understands what would happen to a human body in space. Is it simply a matter... Because we're not talking the pressures of the depths of the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
We are talking basically a vacuum with no air.
Mm-hmm.
So would your body itself be okay, and you just basically wouldn't be able to breathe? So basically you could hold your breath in space, take off the spacesuit, and I don't know. But yeah, he starts talking about that, and I'm like, I did the same thing. I'm like, you're gonna do what? No, really? And they're talking about cleaning him up, but then this guy's like, oh, you have like 30 seconds of air left because there's a big ass hole in your suit.
Yeah. So it may have been he was just delirious from lack of oxygen.
Could have been that. So then basically the guy says, well, this is what I have to do. And the District 9 guy pushes the chief engineer into because he knows he's screwed at that point. He's like, I'm covered in this hydrazine. I'm not going to be able to survive. And which was really weird because they go from, oh, you have 20 minutes of air left to red in like an instant.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's because he panicked or whatnot. So he pushes the chief engineer in. He tells the captain, close the airlock. He closes the airlock, and then basically he floats into space until they can't hear him anymore, and you don't see him ever again. So they were kind of trying to build up this love for that character, but I don't think they really did a good job. Personally, I was like, okay, he's talking to his kids, and then he's dead.
Yeah, but I said it was just a once-over. They didn't spend,
no, they didn't.
A half hour showing his backstory on Earth, playing with, ball with his kids, walking the dog, and all that stuff. I mean, they just basically kind of alluded to the fact that he has kids.
Yeah, he has kids. It never showed the kids. But yeah, that's kind of what they did with all of them. It's like, okay, she's a pilot. Here's what she has to say about going to space. She's a marine biologist that turned space geek, and here's what she wants to do.
Right.
So yeah, it definitely had like enough science that it was cool, but not enough that it was way over the top. The characters, they didn't over the top develop them. I don't think they underdeveloped them.
Right, because like in most good science fiction, the story is the main character, not the characters themselves. The character is just the vehicles to tell the story.
Correct. It's basically the mission and what happened is the character.
Right. When you have like, dramas or, you have the stories there to develop the characters.
Yeah. And there was a little comedy thrown in. Not too much, not too little. There was a couple of comments where they're like, yeah, your whole shower thing sucks.
Yeah.
There was the District 9 guy, he was making comments of, you sent, what is it, 2 girls?
Yeah, 2 women.
2 women with 4 outfits and
2 pairs of shoes.
Yeah, and then they were talking shit about the food. Typical NASA jabs and stuff like that. So it had some lighthearted moments. Some parts seemed a little bit more serious. Not necessarily more serious than they should have been. But there was definitely some drama build up because it became very clear to me, probably with half an hour left. The movie's only an hour and 30 minutes on the dot with the intro and the credits. So realistically, it's probably an hour 20 actual runtime. But it was very clear to me towards, I'd say, the last half hour that everybody wasn't going to make it. But then they threw in this curveball where you're watching the female pilot talk, and it doesn't look like she's on the ship. It looks like it's almost like a debrief.
Right.
And I was like, oh, okay. Now
they did make it.
They did make it, and obviously I've already spoiled it. Nobody makes it. But yeah, they kind of threw this curveball because all of the camera shots on the ship, and again, like we were saying, there is a couple theatrical. You can obviously tell it's not supposed to be a webcam or a suit cam or something like that. It's a theatrical camera. But this doesn't look like any of those shots. It didn't have any of the overlays with the data or the date and time or anything like that. And it's a different background than we had seen in any of the other shots. And you're like, okay, well, I thought they were all going to die, but obviously she got debriefed. She doesn't look injured. She doesn't even look like she's in a spacesuit of any shape or form. And then at the end, you're like, oh, wow, that was a good curveball. I'm like, okay, because I was like, I have thought, I'm like, oh no, she's going to make it. And then even towards the end, and maybe I heard the whole part of, well, we have to kill the life support to boost the communications to transmit this data back. But then all of a sudden, and basically the very last scene is the female pilot is in, and this is where you see that she was actually recording in the spaceship that's crashed, or basically they tried to take off from the planet or the moon. That fails. They had to crash land back down, and they're basically crashing through the ice if they can't get off of the planet or the moon. And then they realize, okay, we're screwed. We're down to this guy, the chief engineer, and the female. And they're like, basically, the chief engineer says, "There's one more thing we can do. We can boost the comms and get this data back." She's like, "Okay, let's do it." And then it doesn't actually show him die, but you're pretty confident that he falls through the ice again, like 3 of the other characters did. And then you're like, okay, what is she going to do? Now she's all alone. And then she gets in the pilot seat, and it sounds like, to me, at least at home, when I was watching it last night, that the engine's fired. And I'm like, okay, yeah, she is going to make it. And then all of a sudden the water starts rushing in.
Yeah,
and I'm like...
Well, yeah, because she opened the airlock.
And I didn't realize that until the end, where they're talking about she made the ultimate sacrifice to open up the airlock, and that's when you see the water rush in, and that's when you see this basically mini, what I like to call a Kraken, with all these lights and stuff like that. And that was her gift, was she sacrificed herself, opened up the airlock to get a picture of this thing to send back to her.
Okay, actually that makes sense, because I had a problem with that.
Which was what?
Either they're going to freeze or suffocate. If I had a choice, I'd go that route.
Yeah.
I wouldn't drown and get killed by a, European sea monster.
Whatever, yeah, the European Kraken. Yeah.
Yeah, so that actually makes a lot of sense. They actually get footage of it.
And that's how they were able to see, okay. And one of the last scenes, after they flash back, you're back on Earth, it's present day, or whatever present day is for them, and they're showing you still by still the last 5 seconds of the video feed that came from the spacecraft, and it's basically the water filling up. You see all these lights, you can't make it out, and then you're still, even on the very last frame, you can't clearly see what exactly it is.
Right.
There's still this mystery to it. Like I said, it obviously has multiple arms, with lights, and there's white and red lights on it, or pink lights, and it's got a central head like an octopus or a squid, and to me it looks like a kraken. So yeah, that was basically because I thought the same thing, but then again, they don't show the kraken actually, or whatever it is, eat her. You don't ever see what happens to the other people. Like, none of the death scenes are actually there. There's the one guy who dies because he floats around in space. The one chick who falls through the ice when she's trying to chase down the bioluminescence. How'd the captain? Oh, the captain died when they crashed.
Yeah, he fell.
Which why that metal crate opened and closed, or the metal grate opened and closed randomly? I don't know. That was weird. So the captain died when he fell when they crashed back to the moon. The one science guy fell through the ice when they were trying to fix the ship. The chief engineer died falling through the ice again, and then we're assuming dies when the whole thing fills up with water.
Right.
But you don't actually see any of the deaths. It's not like his suit exploded or he gets eaten by the kraken. So there's a lot of mystery in the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, they spared any kind of gore or anything else.
They did. It's not gory, although at times you're like, okay, this is going to get gory or scary, as it were, and it doesn't.
Right.
It's more suspenseful than gore.
Sure.
Which I liked.
No, I thought it was a great movie. I really do. It was, I said, it was just, black and white, nuts and bolts science fiction.
Very much so. And not, like you said, not too over the top, Serenity or Firefly, Star Wars-esque. It's very not too distant future. And it, like you were saying, it's very relative to what's going on in our potential future possibly in our lifetime.
Yeah.
In the next 50, 60 years, we could easily see a privately funded mission to another planet.
Sure.
And one thing to me that really, really kind of hit home is, again, with the movie, is when they launched, they made the comment, like, you see our moon big, and then you see the Earth behind it, and they're like, this is the farthest mankind has been in space since 1970, whatever. 72.
Yeah.
And that's weird to think about.
Sure.
That, okay, we've had a space program for 40 years, 50 years at this point, and we've still not gone anywhere past our moon.
Right.
We've gone to our moon, but we haven't gone past it. Even in, not saying, the next thing is a mission to Mars, but we haven't even taken anybody past our moon.
Right.
And it's like, okay, that very easily could happen. We have people out in the ISS and stuff like that, but they haven't tried to go anywhere farther.
Yeah, but the space station, that's still in orbit, though.
Yeah, correct. It's still in orbit, and they've sent probes and stuff like that, but not manned.
No.
So, but yeah, like you were talking about Elon Musk and SpaceX, they did a launch yesterday. It didn't go as planned, but they're getting closer. They were able to land a couple weeks ago. They took off and had a successful landing.
Well, the satellite made it.
Yeah, the satellite made it, and it was just the landing part.
Yeah, and I guess just 1 foot didn't latch on.
Yeah.
Which, trying to land a rocket on a moving ship out at sea, it's...
Yeah, the whole barge thing.
That's pretty challenging alone as it is,
yeah.
so...
And he's done it, all funded by himself and his companies, and, and he's not the only one. There's a couple of other ones that are out there that are talking, working with NASA to do things, and it's like, that's when you see innovation, when you have government agencies and private sector working together.
Right.
Kind of like DARPA. DARPA, because of the ingenuity in some of the schools and some of the private sector companies, we could see, like I said, very easily in our lifetime, a manned mission to another planet. So it's, we're making baby steps, but again, over the next 50, 60 years, it's no telling what could happen, especially just looking over the last 5-10 years, the technologies that have come about. So, and then again, you think about it, I have an iPhone 5 sitting right there, 5S. That's got more computing power in it than the original spaceship had in it.
Yeah, well, the digital watch does.
The digital watch does.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's insane.
Sure.
To think we got to the moon, landed on the surface of the moon, and came back.
Well, allegedly.
No, Mythbusters prove it.
But and I also liked how the little shout out to 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yes.
With the music. The Blue Danube.
Yep.
Oh, that was a cool little touch.
Yes, it was.
But I'd say overall, scale it 1 to 10, I'd give it a 6.5, 7.
I was going to say 7. I'd give it a solid 7.
So-
I don't know that I'd necessarily watch it again, but having watched it, it's not a bad movie.
No, not at all.
It's worth a once over.
Absolutely. So you got Netflix or you can find it on DVD. Definitely check it out.
Europa Report.
Mortal Kombat on Sega Genesis is the best video game ever.
I disagree. It's a very good game, but I think Donkey Kong is the best game ever.
Donkey Kong sucks.
You know something? You suck.
Okay, moving on. We've got our top 10 list of our favorite video games of all time. And I've got mine in order. Chris, once again, just has a list of 10.
I have a list of 10. I cannot order them. I will not order them. Not from any personal or not from any objection to list. I can't rank one above the other, and I know I'm probably missing some, but these are my personal favorite video games from either I enjoy playing them, well, I obviously enjoy playing all of them, but it's from a bunch of different reasons. Some of them are nostalgic at this point, some of them are because I enjoy the gameplay, so I have different reasons why I pick these games. To me, some of them change the way video games were done. Some of them are because they're stupid and cool and I enjoy playing them. So again, this isn't based on any standard criteria other than what we feel is our favorite top 10, and I think I actually have 11 or 12 video games of all time. So again, don't hate us. These are our personal favorites, just like when we did the movie cars and stuff like that. It's not any criteria. It's not based on who sold the most, who has the best gameplay. It's just our own personal choices for our favorite video games. So, Sean, I'm going to let you go first.
Okay, well, mine are ranked, and I have no objection to ranking them in order. I mean, it might just be arbitrary, but I based it on how much I enjoy playing them, I think.
See, I can't even arbitrarily assign a number.
Okay, number 10, I have Call of Duty Modern Warfare on Xbox 360.
Okay, so also another thing I will premise is that I did not put a specific platform. Some of them are platform specific, some of them are not, and where it does apply. So, and I will say that I do have that on my list. However, I had to take it off because I was told 14 is not enough. So, how much are we going to discuss the individual games?
I'm ready to move on.
Okay, well,
So,
give me a reason why that's a good game for you.
Well, for me, I think it's because it's out of the games I usually played, it's the one I probably play the most online.
Yeah. No, Modern Warfare, I think Modern Warfare and Modern Warfare 2 probably changed online gaming and first-person shooter games. I don't want to necessarily say for the better, but they definitely changed the way they went. They did some groundbreaking stuff, good story, good multiplayer. So we'll move on to your next one.
Okay, I've got Rainbow Six Rogue Spear
Okay.
on the PC, and it's actually the Urban Operations expansion pack.
Oh, you went specific.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and that's because there was one mission that I played over and over and over and over and over again until I had it perfected. There was a siege on an opera house, and we had to free the hostages and take out the terrorists.
Yep.
Or the tangos, as they put them in Rainbow Six. Tango down. I've probably spent way too many hours just perfecting that one mission. So I'm doing the whole list.
Yeah, go your whole
okay. Number 8, Star Wars Force Unleashed.
1 or 2?
The first one.
Okay.
Yeah, the second one, I don't even remember at all. I have it, and I think I spent like 2 hours. I beat it. It was really short.
It was one of the shorter ones.
Yeah, but the first one, I'm pretty faithful to the Star Wars saga.
The movies.
The movies, yes.
Correct.
Don't usually deter from that, but then this was it kind of like loosely played off of it, so it was still part of it, but not quite. I mean, it's before Episode 4, but after the first or the second trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
You have Vader taking on an apprentice, and
yeah.
So I mean, you had a lot of the characters. I mean, Leia had a cameo in it, and Vader obviously is in it. The Emperor's in it,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know. It was just it was, I guess, close enough to the saga.
Well, and I've played both of them too. The Force Unleashed and the Force Unleashed 2. The things, and I still have them today, and every once in a while I'll install it just to go back and play it. The one thing that I liked about them is that you really felt like you were in control of a Jedi. With the Force powers and stuff like that, I really liked the way they executed that game.
Oh, yeah, the gameplay was great.
The gameplay was great. Some of it was a little bit linear from the means of it said, okay, you can only force pull this thing right here.
Sure.
But again, they didn't have quite the technology that they do today, so they might have been limited. But it made you feel like you were a Jedi, that you could force choke a bitch if you wanted to.
Right.
You could lightsaber throw, do all kinds of good stuff. So
my favorite, it was the Wookiee toss.
the Wookiee toss.
Yeah, if you go to Kashyyyk, because they were capturing all the Wookiees to force them into slavery.
Yep.
You could levitate it with the Force and then toss them in the air.
Yep.
Then just wait, and then come back down.
Yep. All right.
Okay, number 7, I have GTA Vice City.
Okay.
On the PC again. And that's just another one. That was the first GTA game that I really got into. Because 1 and 2 were basically like the overhead view. When it was, and then I never played 3 too much. But then I got Vice City because I liked the whole Miami Vice type, 1980s, Miami, or sorry, Vice City, background. A lot of fun because it was like a sandbox game.
Yeah.
And I think when I finally quit playing it, was my computer crashed. I was something like 81.8% done with the game.
Ooh, so close.
Yeah, so close. Okay, number 6, Mortal Kombat, Sega Genesis.
Okay.
I never got into Street Fighter, but Mortal Kombat was pretty cool. I think right because the pizza place that I lived near had Mortal Kombat. They didn't have Street Fighter, so I kind of got into the arcade play of it. Then once I actually got the home console, it was a lot easier to play.
Yeah.
And of course the Blood Code, which was,
I don't know.
Really?
We are on two opposite sides of the fence here. I'm a hardcore Street Fighter 2 player.
Okay.
You're the Mortal Kombat player. I couldn't tell you what any of the fatalities are. I couldn't tell you what the special moves are for any Mortal Kombat.
Yeah. Well, I know Liu Kang. I play Liu Kang all the time. But the Blood Code was ABACABB.
There you go. I would have no clue what it was.
I mean, someday I might have Alzheimer's. I'll forget my kids' names.
But you can remember that in the Konami code.
The Konami code, and also Docking Bay 94.
There you go.
Number 5, I've got Medal of Honor, Allied Assault on PC.
That's a good one.
That was actually the first game I played online.
There you go.
And I remember playing online with dial-up, believe it or not.
Back in the day when I was young.
It was kind of what?
98?
No, it was later than that.
Was it later than that?
Like 2000, 2001,
okay,
maybe. Yeah, I remember playing on dial-up, and there was lag.
There was lag.
That's why I introduced the lag.
Yep, but you learn how to play through it. I remember playing, like Doom and Quake and Unreal Tournament, and you got used to it.
Yeah, and then now you the headset, you just talk to everybody else. Back then, you actually had to type in your messages.
Yeah.
And while you're typing, you get your ass shot off.
Yep.
Okay, and then number 4, it's not a game so much as it was a simulator, but it was M1 Tank Platoon. Microprose put it out. I think it was in like 92, 93, maybe. I
remember that one.
Yeah, it was basically you were in charge of a 4-tank platoon.
Okay, more like a simulator.
Yeah, and you're over in Europe, and you were trying to stop the advancing Russians.
Is it more like a real-time strategy, or kind of like you're building up stuff, or?
No, you assemble your 4-tank team,
mm-hmm.
and then you've got the tank commander position you can go to. You've got the tank driver, the gunner. I mean, basically the loader or whatever. But you were in charge of the
okay.
The tank crew.
Did you command one tank or all 4?
You could command the tank that you were in. Basically, everyone else holds back,
mm-hmm.
and you take one tank. They all follow you,
mm-hmm.
or you could go onto the map screen and tell that one to go over here, that one to go over there.
Gotcha.
Fire at will, hold fire, whatever.
Gotcha. And did you actually like drive the tank, or was it just you pointing and clicking?
No, you could. You could all
okay,
positions.
You could go.
Yeah, you could be the tank commander. You could be the gunner. You could be the driver.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was a fun one. And I spent a lot of time playing that. Number 3, I have Contra on NES.
Got to go with that.
Which goes right back to the Konami code.
That's right.
For your 99 lives.
That's right.
That's just nostalgia.
Yeah, absolutely.
Number 2, I've got Madden 95 on Sega Genesis. I think 95 was by far and away the best one.
I didn't have a Sega when I was growing up, so I can't comment.
Yeah, Madden 95. I was already out of high school in 95, but the cool thing about Madden 95 was that after the plays were over, you could keep hitting the opposing player.
Yeah, I do recall seeing that.
And you could actually injure the other player.
You could, yeah. Yeah, no, my video game career, as it were, took a weird turn. I mean, I remember having an Intellivision. I remember my grandmother had an Atari. We got an NES, and then we had a Super Nintendo.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, I didn't jump to the Nintendo 64. I got a PlayStation. So I completely went away from Nintendo. We
That's
got
weird.
a PlayStation and then a PlayStation 2. And somewhere in between the PlayStation and PlayStation 2, I really got into PC gaming.
Mm-hmm.
And I've pretty much been a hardcore PC gamer ever since.
Right.
I've never had an Xbox, the original. I had an Xbox 360. I think when I got the Xbox 360, it had already been out for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I still have it now, and my kid plays it more than I do.
Right.
So, yeah, I went really weird with my games. So,
And number one, I'd say I've just nostalgia and just how much I played it and how much the game holds up, because I played it a month ago. It was Mario 3
yep.
on NES. I think that is by far and away the perfect video game.
And I remember them debuting it in the Wizard.
Yeah.
And that's, yep. So, and I do have Mario 3 on my list as well.
Okay.
So, anything else you want to add on yours?
No, I had to struggle to just get 10. I didn't want to go over 10, but apparently you did.
I did. I always do. Again, these are in no specific order. I will not rank them.
I'll rank them for you.
You can rank them for me. I do have Contra on there. Again, that's a nostalgia thing. I had an NES. I played that. It's not that it's the greatest game. It's a linear shooter, but it's one of the very first games that I remember playing beyond the Duck Hunt and the Mario Brothers that came with the NES. I want to say, in fact, that it was probably bundled, but I don't remember for sure. After that is going to be Goldeneye on the Nintendo 64.
Never played it.
It's probably what I would call one of the first-person shooters that really went mainstream. It was on the Nintendo 64. And again, like I said, I didn't have a Nintendo 64, but in 1999, I graduated from high school. Again, I'm old. Sean's older, haha. And I went to college. And there was 6 guys in a dorm room, and one of the guys had a Nintendo 64. And we spent ungodly amounts of hours drunk playing Goldeneye. It was really one of, if not the most influential, I would say, a very influential first-person shooter game. Again, I said it was the first, but it's really not when you look at like Doom and Wolfenstein, but it went to a whole different level that kind of directed where first-person shooters went. I got Mario Kart on my list. I liked it on the Super Nintendo. It got a little weird. I think that's more of an honorable mention for me, but I remember playing it with my mom. You can't go wrong with, kids playing with video games with their mom. So, Street Fighter 2, like I said, I didn't have a Sega. My mom was a little bit more strict on what we could watch or what we could play. So we had Street Fighter 2.
So you're saying I had a bad mom?
I'm not saying that at all. Not at all. But we had a Super Nintendo. We had it on the Super Nintendo, and I played the shit out of that game. And then there was one pizza joint right around the corner that we went to frequently that had a Street Fighter game. They didn't have Mortal Kombat. I was probably, I would say, in my late teens by the time I'd ever played a Mortal Kombat game.
Was there ever a Street Fighter 1 game?
I don't know. I think
I never saw one.
I don't know. I haven't done enough research.
What are you kicking?
The table, I think. I want to say it was Street Kings is what the first one was, or something like that. And then they renamed it, and I don't remember ever seeing it.
So why would the second one just be called Street Fighter?
I don't know. I never really looked into the lineage, but I know it's a import from Japan.
Yeah, I just thought that just now. Like, wait a minute.
Yeah. Next is going to be SimCity. Not so much the ones now. I like the ones now. They're a little bit more modern, but I remember spending hours and hours of time building stupid cities and then having a dinosaur come through and kill everything. And then on top of that, same thing is another game. It's called Sim Farm. I don't know what it was about that game. It was for the PC. It was SimCity, but you were a farmer. And I spent hours and hours and hours trying to make millions of dollars as a farmer. Maybe because I was a city boy and I had never seen a farm. But yeah, that's kind of one of my deep, dark secrets.
Wow.
I have Half-Life 1 and 2. I wouldn't put them on my top 10, but they're honorable mentions. Legend of Zelda. Nintendo Entertainment Center System. The Gold Disc.
Right.
I have one at home right now. I have a love-hate relationship for this game. when I played this game when it originally came out, you did not have the internet. And I begged for 2 years for my mom to give me the strategy guide because I could not do anything with this game.
Mm-hmm.
Finally got it. I probably got it to 50 to 60% completed. And I don't remember what happened, but I went to play. It wasn't that long of a time period, maybe a week or so. Went to play again, and my saved game was gone. Because this was one of the first cartridges for the Nintendo.
So it had the code where you could save it, right?
It had a battery. It actually saved it inside.
Oh, okay.
There was a lithium like watch battery inside the cartridge that was supposed to save your game.
Really?
It was one of the first that I'm aware of, and I could be completely wrong, but from my recollection, it was the first disc that would actually save your game on the disc
or cartridge
or on the cartridge, and it was gone. And I was basically from that, I threw the game away. I said, fuck this, I'm done. And I still haven't gotten the nerve to come back.
I've done the same thing.
Next for me is Battlefield 1942. That was, for me, that was probably one of the first games that I really got into. Multiplayer. It was awesome. You could jump into a prop plane or a bomber or whatever. You could jump into a tank.
Right.
Again, we're talking about lag. It was...
Well, yeah, because you went the Street Fighter 2 route, I went the Mortal Kombat route.
Yep.
Yeah, Medal of Honor,
yep.
you went Battlefield.
Battlefield, yep. So, I do have Rainbow Six on the list. I have to agree with you with that. I wasn't specific enough with Rogue Spear. I liked all of them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of the newest one, Rainbow Six Siege. I've been playing it. It's a little bit different than what I was expecting, but it's not bad. I know there's a lot of people out there that hate it. What I liked about it was the planning.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this team's going this way, this team's going this way. You breach at the same time. You breach and clear.
And that's what I was doing with the that one.
And you basically got your timing down and you figured it out until it was perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And if you didn't get it perfect, if one of your guys died or a hostage died, you started all over and you did it again.
That's exactly what I did.
Yep. I have Final Fantasy VII, one of my personal favorites. I played it on the original PlayStation. They're doing a remake right now on it. It was probably one of the more mainstream Final Fantasy games. I played a couple of the earlier ones that weren't too big mainstream-wise. It's got good characters, good character developments. The graphics going back are horrible, but for the time they were good. I just really enjoyed the game. I have Super Mario 3, like you, nostalgia thing. I have Gran Turismo on the PlayStation. One of the first driving games that I ever played. Great graphics, great gameplay. I just love that game. And my last one is going to be World of Warcraft. You knew that was coming. I played Warcraft, the original, when it was Orcs and Humans. I played Warcraft 2, Warcraft 3. Played World of Warcraft. I've played it since basically it first came out, what they call Vanilla WoW. I actually got into the beta before it came out, briefly. I've played every part of the expansion since. I don't play currently. I kind of jump back and forth. There's a couple years where I took a little bit of a break, but I always, for some reason, would keep coming back. I did it with, the Burning Crusades. I played through Wrath of the Lich King, and now with Mist of Pandaria. I was kind of a little late to that, and then some of the newer ones too. I don't know what it is about that game, but I find myself every, I'd say year, 6 months to a year, I get this bug to play it. I'll reactivate my account, I'll play it for 6 months, I'll basically get to where I'm bored, and then I'll stop playing. It's like that warm blanket in the corner that you can always come back to.
Right.
If I don't have anything else I'm playing, I'll load in World of Warcraft. It's some of the stuff, like I said, gets repetitive. I get to the point where don't feel like I'm making any progress, or I'm grinding for the dungeons. And I know I'm speaking French to you, but because he doesn't get down with the WoW
at all.
But his girlfriend does, and my wife does, so we got that in common. It's always people bitch about WoW in various manners. I could bitch about it. I can praise it at the same time. I just enjoy playing it. It's everybody does their thing, so.
Mm-hmm.
That's my 13, 14 list.
Has 13 out of your top 10?
Yes, in
Okay.
no particular order, with a couple of honorable mentions.
Yeah, fair enough. And like we said, if anybody wants to chime in with their top 10s or has anything to say about our top 10s, we're more than open to listen. If you want to send us an email and want to get us on Twitter, yeah, go ahead and do so. And since we recorded our last episode, we lost someone in the world. Alan Rickman passed away.
Well, and then at this point, David Bowie.
And David Bowie, actually the same day.
Same day, and then somebody else just died today.
Glenn Frey from the Eagles.
Glenn Frey from the Eagles.
So I think from now on, I think Christmas shall be known as Saint Hans Gruber Day.
St. Hans Gruber Day.
And I think that wraps up our cast for today.
Sounds
and
good.
All right, I'm Sean.
I'm Chris.
And we're signing off.
Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads. My calculations are correct. When this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious shit.
The Force will be with you, always.